is a perfect word for what I'm going to work through with you. Periphery defines the environment, the perimeter. And entrepreneurs are truly a product of their environment. Not only are they a product of what they imagine things to be, but how they function, how you function, how effective you are, and even your quality of life and your contribution to the world has, to a great degree, a relationship with your environment, your perimeter, what you put around you, your support structure. And so what this means is having a sensitivity that's probably greater than you ever have before to your environment, to your perimeter, to what you set up around you. Now, this is a little different than traditional thought because much of our focus can be on ourselves and what matters to us and what we're working on and our focus. But there's an integration with the environment over the years that I've been working with entrepreneurs, and this integration is highly important. So this means that you consciously choose to grant power to the periphery, the environment around you. Let me tell you some of the environments that you can consider, and I look at this through the lens of your senses first. Environments that you might hear are music, sound around you, in your spatial environments. Your natural environment could be something that you see, something that you hear, noises, sounds. Your food environment could be something that you taste, put in your body, or you feel nourished by. People around you could interrelate with how you feel. Elation. Relationship means re-elation, to re-elate, to repeat elation. Your environment could include your clothing, your cloth around you. Your bed, for example, that you sleep in is an environment. Spatial environments could be, for example, your office, your home, your second home, your vehicle, the car you drive. So the environments, these are things that you spend your time with. These are areas or dimensions that you interact with. Other environments could be a technology, for example, automation. These automated items could be items that remind you. They could be items that track information for you. Also, the human environment. Other than relational environment in our personal life, we have a human relationship environment in our workplace. We have a human capital environment. We have an environment around us of people who can get things done that we don't necessarily do as well. So we have natural environments, we have work environments, we have home environments, we have car environments, technological environments. We also have some other invisible types of environments that I've noticed. We have invisible forces like expectations of us, promises that others count on us for, perceptions that others have of us, assumptions that people or groups have of us. And some of those we may or may not be able to control. But this environment relationship is like a crab. Think of like a crab. A crab has an exoskeleton. It relies upon that exoskeleton for structure. It doesn't have an inner skeleton. So you're reliant upon the periphery. Now, there are environments that can be hazardous, and there are hazardous environments, and there are non-hazardous environments. I have seen many office environments be terribly hazardous, like a snake pit. When you walk in, you're just bit by anything. Imagine in Indiana Jones when he was lowered into that that tomb, all those snakes. Now just imagine how suitable your office is to that, or imagine how your office is just like that. Or it seems like a bee sting that you get. You run into a hive, and you're constantly stung by things. So in that environment, your ability to maintain course and to set yourself upon plans and complete them is completely eradicated because you are reacting and responding to so many distractions, unexpected circumstances, questions that you shouldn't be asked, calls that you shouldn't be taking, cell phones that shouldn't be ringing, emails that shouldn't have come through at the wrong time. All of these things around us, paper that's ending up on our desk, messages that are coming in on our voicemails, all of these things are happening in our environment unexpectedly. And they're not necessarily a product of poor planning. It's just stuff that comes up. And in offices, that seems to be the biggest monster. S-T-U-F-F. Stuff. I couldn't figure out a better word for it, so I just call it stuff. And the big question is, how do we handle our stuff without jeopardizing our personal life? How do we interact with the environment in a way where we can handle our stuff and we can still have fun and we can look forward to growing our business and still maintain a sense of hope? Because there's a sense of consumption. As you've grown your business, your environment has become polluted. Your environment is polluted by expectations of you. It's polluted by you being individualistic. It's polluted by a lack of resources around you. It's polluted by an inability to exercise systems around you. In other words, steps and checklists. Can you imagine what Ray Kroc felt when he designed the McDonald's environment for people to work in? I bet he was able to work into his restaurant and probably get all the way through to the bathroom if he walked from the front door there without a question. Because everybody knew what to do, where to do it, how to do it. It was all documented into manuals and illustrations. He had a very suitable environment for him to maintain his concentration on his strategies so he could build his next McDonald's restaurant. I look at your environment as just a bunch of snakes. And to some degree, depending on how much you've grown without preparation for it, your snakes have gotten so bad that they're paralyzing you. In fact, the sting is so bad, the jellyfish has paralyzed you, and you can't even walk on the beach because you've just gone into the water, you've gotten stung, and you can't do anything about it. And you're constantly playing rescue, and you're constantly playing firefighter to this periphery that has become a giant suck. They're like vampires that are running at you, trying to suck you dry, and they've got leeches like little succulents on each hand that are digging into you, and they're just sucking you dry of your time. So here I have described to you how sensitive we are to our environment and how reliable we are based on our environment toward our goals and maintaining course, and yet we have this environment that's completely counteractive, and we become frustrated. And all this enthusiasm that we've had earlier in our career just seems to deteriorate because we don't know what to do with all this stuff. What are we going to do with it? It's just constantly invading our abilities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some simple focusing strategies and ideas that you can take back into your office environment first, and you can begin to redirect your focus. Now, what's the positive side of this? I mean, what is the outcome? What is the change that you could take delivery of? You could basically have a mental space so that you could think once again about your dream, your future, your next step. You could begin to create what you want because now you have more space on your hard drive, your personal hard drive, given the personal RAM that you have. So we're going to reduce the complexity, get to some simplicity here, set up your support structure by way of you being the strategist. You'll also be able to find yourself being able to focus in your days, having a sense of confidence, because when your environment is a giant suck full of vampires and snakes and hornets, your confidence goes low. And so the only thought about getting a future is there ain't no way I'm going to because I'm going to work 16, 18, 19, 20-hour days, In order to do that, there's no way I could overcome the stuff. So we have to look at the stuff. Now, if you're going to start cracking at the stuff, we better have an idea as to what's really, really most important to you within certain dimensions. So let me explain. The long-term dimension is what long-term you want to create, the kind of organization you want to create in your life planning, what kind of life that you want to have. You want a business that serves your life, not consume it. So in doing that, we set up the environment to do this. But having a sense of what is absolutely essential to you, what would be the 7 to 8 best values, the things that are truly important to you universally in life, so that you have a sense of direction. You have a sense of self-generated direction. You have a place to go. Now, here's why I say this. Because if you don't have a sense of where you need to be, then you don't have a mindfulness of what's not working today. And if all you're going to do is just remedy a problem of noise, then once the noise is gone, all the actions that originally defeated the noise stops. Because you're problem solving. So I don't want you to take on a problem solving approach. Think of what I'm going to teach you as a function of creating a much larger outcome, not as work to be done to eradicate a problem. I mean, I realize it's hurting. I realize you have pain. I realize that, oh my gosh, JD, if this gets any worse, I don't even want to go in this morning because I'm not going to be able to do anything. So all I'm going to do is just be on the phone, get snagged into meetings, get on those phone calls, check my voicemail, do email. By the end of the day, 5 o'clock, the whistle blows. I ain't done nothing because now I haven't done anything in pursuit of what's important to me. So can you see now how if you have a sense of what your end in mind is, what you want to create, if this isn't written, then you truly don't have a sense of violation of what's essential and what's not essential. And I don't imagine you would stand up for yourself very much when you need to decline offers that are irrelevant. If you need to say no, for example, which is one of those items to help set up your environment, is, hey, look, I can't do that. Or no, I decline. Or no, thank you very much. That just doesn't work for me right now. What do you base that no on? Do you base it on just the idea that JD said say no? Well, that's not going to last very long. You're saying no because something else is more essential. So before we even talk about cleaning up your office environment, let's make sure that you have the essentials down for yourself. You have a very clear notion of what you want to create. Number 2, how you invest your time to a great degree determines how successful you are. Time is a very cruel force. You can't control time. It's like going to the beach, standing waist high in the waves, and trying to stop them. The waves just roll right through you, and that's the character of time. But what you can do is you can control your priorities. You can control your choices. Everybody has 24 hours in a day. Bill Gates, you, the bum on the Bowery, me, anybody. We all have, Donald Trump, we all have 24 hours in a day. So it isn't about enough time. And sometimes we feel, oh my gosh, if I had 35 hours in a day, I could get it all done. No, you're working in time like a container. And so it really gets down to how you're choosing to use the time that you have and what your priorities are. And the bottom line is this. You may have an estimation that you can get it all done. You may have a superfluous idea of yourself that you can tackle it all. But I would imagine as you get older and more experienced, you really realize how limited you are. And that's a matter of maturity. So it forces you to think clearer about what you do with your time because you know that time is scarce. Death is a horrible idea. I mean, to some it's very, very scary, but at the same time it's positive in its way of motivating us because we realize that there is a finiteness to the dimension of time that opens up in our life and that there will be a stoppage, and that organizes the present. The German concentration camps used a word called deadline, that any prisoner who went outside the fence was dead. They were to be shot. Well, deadlines were very motivating to these prisoners because they knew that if they stayed within the line, they would be alive. So in your life, you establish deadlines. What is your time worth? What is your time worth? If you don't know what your time is worth, how will anyone else? Begin your desired annual income. Begin with identifying your desired annual income, and then the time you wish to spend at work, and divide your income by your time, and that should tell you. I'm going to tell you something. Based on the latest census, the average executive gets 100% of his productivity out of about a half hour of his average day. That means out of 8 hours, a half hour of 8 is what contributes to the real productive outcomes. That scares me. So now really think about what your time is worth. If your time is worth whatever you come up with and you use about a half hour of an average 8-hour day, that takes your hourly rate and probably multiplies it by a source of 8. So now do your hourly rate, assuming that you spend your most productive time, 1 out of, let's say, 8 hours or a half hour out of 8 hours every day that you decide to work. So what's your time worth? Now that you know your time's worth X, you have a sense of what it costs you to waste it. So when you get one of those miscellaneous items, when you knowing that you're getting sucked into a distraction, you have a very clear consciousness of how much your time is worth so that you can calculate what kind of invoice somebody is running on your time. Next, get to your interrupters before they get to you. We often wait until the vampires come and get us. Get to your vampires before they get to you. In our VIP coaching program, this is very simple. Our clients set up what they call maintenance time and high performance time, and they separate these out. And in between those days, the only thing that separates them is a good night's sleep. So what they do is they focus on a high performance day with just productive activities about 80% of the day. And then the time that precedes that is much like an athlete and entertainer would do. They have preparation time, and they clean up details, and they mop things up that they must do, and they upgrade their business with things that they're working on. They include systems and things. I'll be talking more about the interrelationship between these two times throughout this audio. But getting to your interrupters means in preparation for what you're going to do to make money, you have to make a list of all the potential time bandits, kind of like Karate Kid. You prepare yourself for what punches might come through, and then you get to them before they get to you. So if you have a client that tends to call you for needs, you want to call them first. If you have a staff member that tends to need help because you know they're deficient on a skill, you get with them first. If you have expectations around a particular project that needs to be done that's on your project list, you have to call the individual and let them know what you're doing about it and when it should be done. So what you're doing is you're setting things up so that your interrupters are forewarned. Will you get to 100% of them? No. But will this make a dramatic difference? What if you could improve it by 50%? What if you could get to 40%? That you're going to see a dramatic difference in. Instead of getting your door beat down 8 times, maybe it's going to be 4 times. And that 4, looking at what your time is worth, is going to turn back into money saved. Get to them before they get to you. Another way that our entrepreneurs do this is by setting up a strategy we call got-a-minute meetings. Got-a-minute meetings. Before we met them, most of their day was run by those 3 words. Got a minute? Got a minute? Got a minute? They're so blue in the face with got a minute, it's throwing up. Got a minute? Got a minute? Got a minute? Got a minute? Blah, blah, blah. So becoming a non-got-a-minute leader is about setting up got-a-minute meetings proactively on days when you need to, or you could do this once a day, or on money-making days when you're doing high performance, maybe you have 2. So, for example, on your calendar, you have 11 to 11:30, a got-a-minute meeting, and in the afternoon you have a 3 to a 3:30. So let's say you're out on the road and you're calling back and your support team knows that they have an open shot with you. They don't call you. They're instructed not to contact you about details. They position those questions within those got-a-minute time periods, and they're expecting to talk to you. Now, what do you think happens? A couple of things. One, you strengthen them for the next time because they think more on their own. Knowing they have to deal with a delay, they're probably going to solve more problems than they need you for. And number 2 is you're going to be prepared for the interruption. So you're not on one foot saying, hey, how can I help you with this? I'm already busy. You're not going to be busy. You're going to be expecting an open shot to you. So set things up so that your got-a-minute meetings are in your calendar, and you can create a routine, for example. Let's say that you, on high-performance time, you have money-making days. Let's say you have 2 or 3 days, and you set them up here and here at this time. And then maybe on a maintenance day, you are doing 1, so you have a got-a-minute meeting there. These got-a-minute meetings are lifesavers so that you stop the vampires. It's a wooden stake that you put right in them so that the individuals know how to interact with you. In my experience, it completely cut down on the amount of time the interruption normally stole, because both of us are prepared. I'm prepared to handle it. The individual has organized their thinking. They know that they have a limited amount of time, and so they have to get to the essentials in what they need from me. Next strategy, get lost. Part of the reason that vampires are running at you is you're around too much. And so since you're around too much, especially if you don't look busy, if you don't look busy, you're just attracting an open interruption. One of my best strategies that I can give you is to make a plan to get rid of your office. You don't need an office. It's not an environment that plays to your best work, and it doesn't necessarily play to your real work as an entrepreneur or a commission salesperson. An office is a snake pit. It is an environment around you that is an absolute detractor to your very, very best work. It's like television. Television is it's a distraction training. And what an office is it's a place for work to be processed. It is a place for maintenance work to happen. It's a place for client fulfillment to take place. Now, you may be saying, but wait a minute, JD, I need to meet with people. I need to interact with people. That's right. Where you make money and where you contribute to your earning power is you're either generating leads, or you're converting them into becoming clients, or you're actually servicing them if you're like an attorney or a professional and getting paid for the services you provide, or you're reconverting them. You're propagating your clients. You're taking your current clients to a lunch and you're talking to them about how to get the additional lines of insurance with them. Or you're talking about how to protect their risk in something else, or why they're not writing you checks for these products they're buying from somebody else. You're getting your clients more involved. That's called upselling and add-on. So you make this money with them, but your space doesn't support it. Now, all you really need to make money, the environment that you could set up to do this, is simply this. You need a computer or a laptop computer to be mobile. You need a phone jack or a cellular phone. And you need a table and some chairs and a nice space, obviously, so that it positions you. You could do this in an executive suite that you pay hourly for those particular times. You really don't need anything else in the space. So any of the files that you have, I call them buckets. Filing systems are just buckets. It's like, hey, I'm over here. Put the complexity that's going to distract me in this. And pile up comes from slow decision making. The reason that we get clutter is because we slow down our decision making. We don't process stuff, so stuff doesn't get handled. So you probably went into somebody's office and you noticed that they have those little 3-divider inboxes, and they're just completely tapped out, full to the top. There's dust on the top. Nothing's been attended to. It's just a collecting point. Take away the collecting points from yourself. Get the file cabinet out of your office. You don't need a working desk so that it says, hey, Mr. Paper, come over here, sit on my desk. Take all those file collecting areas and have one particular inbox for paper. That's all you need. Or have your assistant get some ground rules on particular items that are non-essentials for you, and only to put the items that you need to see in your inbox so that it is already scanned, and then she delivers the things to you that are essential within your parameters. But get rid of your office, and if you're not comfortable doing it, I challenge you, because it's an inner fear. It is not an outer problem. The inner fear that you feel is, if I get rid of my office, I will feel like I don't have a business. That is not true. Your office is not your business. It is literally a contradiction to the very being that you have as an entrepreneur. It is a giant trap. So, make a date with yourself when you will be out of your office. Dress your car up nicely. Set up that environment so that your trunk is fully turnkey when you need to pull a piece of information for a potential client, or you have a client who needs a brochure, or they need a story, or you have an article about you. Anything you need to prepare to have checks written to you, set up your car so that you can get checks. I call it the mobile results machine. Set up the periphery so that your car is fully turnkey. Make your car your office, and have an office space that just has a round table, chairs, a laptop computer, and you have your phone jack and so forth, so that all you really do is focus on value creation discussions and deepening the impact that you have with people who interact with you. The relationships write you checks. Time does not write you checks. Relationships do. I can't remember the last time time ever wrote me a check. Relationships write you the checks. So we want to focus on bringing the value to the relationships. And again, your environment, your periphery can be set up to support you in doing this. So 1, get lost. Get rid of your office. Office does not directly make you money. Getting in front of people does. And you make your money in the marketplace. So you don't make money being busy behind a desk full of cabinets and buckets that just collect complexity so you can steal your dream. You are what you do. So if you're doing filing, you're a clerical worker. If you're answering phones, you're a receptionist. If you're servicing client problems, you're a customer service representative. Look at your calendar and tally up where you're spending your time, and if you tally up the roles that you're spending your time on, you will very clearly see where your priorities are, and you will see how the environment is having you take on other things than you're supposed to be doing. So, again, the important thing here is to fire you from those roles by virtue of having individuals around you so that you can do this. And in order to make that transition, we have to get rid of these noises. Get lost. I talked about what's your time worth and getting to the interrupters before they get to you, maintenance time, and the got-a-minute meetings. So we're just getting started. Next step, put up the steel curtain with ample support. Create a call log. Let people who call you know they've got to state the purpose of their call. Otherwise, they won't get a return phone call. Have your assistant create a VIP list of, let's say, 10 or 12 of your top very important people that will get through when calling. And then line up a customer rebound system. Assign your staff designated normally to handle customers that are still requesting you to let the customer know that if it goes to you, it'll simply come right back to them anyway. In other words, you're going to equip your team to be calling upon your customers who you know they need to handle because they're designated to handle them and say, I know that you want to talk to Tony, but I normally handle that anyway. It'll just boomerang right back to me. So why don't we give you the quality of service you've been led to expect, and let's get this handled right away. Let your confidence fly with your staff on that, because the more they are certain about it, the more they are equipped to handle your client, the better. You can also set it up where you do the follow-up calls to say, Tony's going to do a follow-up call with you, but I normally handle this kind of thing. He quality assures that you get what you want, but it normally just comes right back to me anyway, and he takes all the credit. So why don't we just do it right here, right now? And you obviously want to designate it to the person who has the best skill sets, who lends their passions to doing what you're asking them to do. I wouldn't pick a staff person that's the worst in your company to do this sort of thing. Switch to written communication. This is the next step, is we direct people to get to us through many, many different means, and I think written communication is a lot more effective than voice communication. Why? Because it eliminates the amount of interactions that you need to have with somebody. This is the jewel of email. Email is fantastic. Fax is even better, even though it's a little outdated. But the point is, the person sending it to you tends to think through what they want more. You get that kind of call where it says, "Hi, John, give me a call. Bye." And you have no idea what the purpose of the call was, what the details of the call were. You had no idea how to respond. You didn't know where to direct it to somebody around. Now you have to call the person back. You get a voicemail. "Hi, this is Harry. Please leave a message. Thank you." "Hi, Harry. Got your call. Give me a call back." Harry calls back. "Hi, Tony. I'm sorry I missed you. Give me a call back tomorrow. I'll be around at 3 o'clock. You call Harry. He's not around. So now we've had we've had 5 interactions so far. What's your time worth? Well, obviously it's costing you. It's running on your time clock. So once it's in writing, I would encourage that you ask individuals who you interact with to do this in writing. And here's one way you can do it. Your voicemail is a terrific education tool. And I don't have a problem with you leaving long voicemails for people, outgoing voicemails that communicate how you want them to interact with you, as long as you put a bypass in there. So let me give you an example of how this works. "Hi, this is John. To bypass this message, please hit pound at this time. I appreciate your call. We have a policy of operating by appointment only. The reason we do that is to offer our clients the highest quality of service. We will be returning phone calls tomorrow between the hours of 1 and 3 o'clock. please leave specific details as to why you're calling, your specific challenge, and your call will be returned within that time. Leave a message when prompted. Again, you want to leave an outgoing message that says something to that tune. You may also want to include things like, to bypass this message, hit pound, or for faster service, please email us at info@highlevelperformance.com. You have the option of leaving a message. We do make a policy of returning phone calls within a 24-hour period, and we do operate by appointment only. We do this to provide outstanding service that our clients have been led to expect. Please leave a message when prompted. If you're going to ask for a delay or you're going to request a person to change their behavior, you better throw a nugget in there. In other words, quality is associated with the delay. We get back to you so that we can give you exactly what you want. So you can leave these kinds of outgoing voicemails. And with clients, I've learned that about 10% give them pushback, but the other 90%, who are their biggest clients, say that's one of the smartest things I've ever heard. So rather than having a voicemail saying, "Hi, this is X company, please leave a message," you give specific instructions as to how that works. Another way you can do this is to establish what I call a new client orientation in your business. And here's how it works, is you actually make a formal process that when you acquire a new client, you either designate someone in your company to do this, or you do this on paper, or you do this on a CD audio, and you have specific ground rules or a statement of understanding that instructs an individual who interacts with you in being successful. Because you need to help them get what they want from you. Let me say that again. You need to help them get what they want from you. In other words, if they know how to interact with you based on what they expect to get, they're going to most likely get what they want. But it has to be a win-win scenario. So come up with a new client orientation process. And these are several terms of engagement that lead the client to expect how to interact with you. That could be a 24-hour callback policy to put everything in writing via email to so-and-so. It could also explain your matrix or your accountability chart of different individuals who are experts to handle certain types of work, so the person understands if they have a certain issue, they know who to call with certain extensions. There could be certain guidelines for them as to hours that you open. There could be certain request delineations, such as if you have this type of request, here's what we can or can't help you with. Or there could be some light coaching in there about what to do if X problem comes up. Here are some solutions, so you answer their questions before they need to call you. Again, you're looking to not be running red lights with them, but in a very engaging way, develop a relationship with the client so they don't have to learn this over a long period of time. They immediately get how to attend the show. They know how to come into the theater after they buy a ticket, and they know how to interact and behave watching the show. So they get entertained as best as they can. So they know where to sit. They know how to interact. They know when to clap. They know when to applaud. They know they're not supposed to yell out noises during the play or the opera. They know how to behave so that they can enjoy a full show. And this is how you do it. Now, it does require a little energy up front. But the kind of environment that you create on the back end is an environment where clients become truly great clients, and they can become raving fans because you've set it up this way. They end up taking delivery of better service. The next step, email. When was the last time that you saw your inbox clear? Our inboxes are rarely clear. What I suggest is you go at this with blocking off time when you will answer emails. Thinking that access equals success is a deadly paradigm. I email individuals and they just email me immediately back, and I think to myself, is this person ever busy? But what I found is, in interviewing several people, is they feel that their immediacy with email somehow communicates better service. And up to a certain point, that may be so. But if an individual is going to have a life running a business, I can't imagine them handling 200 emails, let alone getting rid of spam, etc. So aside from having spam filters, which is a very smart move, assuming the emails are useful, set up a file to the left of your inbox called Email When I Get to It. And everything that comes into your inbox that goes over 2 minutes to answer, you put it in there. This is something David Allen said, the author of Getting Things Done. Is he said we answer email on the spot as knowledge workers. And I think this is very smart, is that we don't have to answer email on the spot. And we're also going to think more clearly when we designate certain blocks of time to answer emails. So you may want to have 2 hours during the day where that's all you do is just do email, and you process email. Now, you also may want to set up in your new client orientation that you answer emails within 24 hours. So the individual has an expectation that you're under-promising, you're going to over-deliver, rather than over-promise and under-deliver. You're clearly setting up these expectations. And I have found in working with individuals, they're totally okay with it because I'm accurate about it up front. Rather than misleading them and them holding a dangerous perception of me being the immediate service provider, I don't come through and they wonder why they're not getting good service. Good service you need to associate with quality instead of immediacy. Now, some people won't stand for that. Some people will need it right away. And again, you can deal with them on a 2-minute basis. Now, here's another thing you can do is you can acknowledge the email, but don't necessarily process it. So within those 2 minutes, I may say, thank you for your email. I understand this is what you would like done. I'm planning on giving my best attention to that before 5 p.m. tomorrow. If this is going to make you suffer, please email me back. Now, most individuals are going to say, thank you for acknowledging my request. I didn't actually do the request, so I don't fear looking at the email. I may grab the email, but I'm processing it and saying, okay, here's when I'm going to do it. And the individual knows. Now, if the individual, let's say I'm a printer, and the individual is going to suffer because the job needs to be processed, well, then I'm going to try to negotiate something that's going to work for the two of us. And I get a sense of urgency from the person that's not perceived, but it's real. Okay, so blocking off emails, putting things in your inbox into this item, responding and acknowledging, blocking this off. I also mentioned earlier, and I didn't make an emphasis on it, but blocking off time, and I call it return call blocking. If your voicemails are filling up, we often get a voicemail full of messages. Assuming you've asked people for specific details, that's going to help you make effective decisions. But what do you do with those voicemails? I suggest on your outgoing voicemail to communicate a return call blocking time. Now, you can do this on a daily basis. Traditionally, you hear somebody set their voicemail on a daily basis. That's a terrific habit. Or you may have a routine call blocking time, or you maybe have a 24-hour promise callback time. I suggest that you do schedule that so that you do have return call blocked, and you can do that heavily on maintenance days. You can do that lighter on high-performance days so that you live a normal life. Also, when you do return emails and you do return phone calls, have something scheduled afterwards. So if you schedule to return phone calls for 2 hours, have something at 3 o'clock that you know you're going to do, like a meeting or a meeting with a client that you can't negotiate. So that what you don't do is you don't run red lights returning phone calls all afternoon. You maintain the dimension of the space. The same thing with the emails, because emails can get out of hand. We just continue to just get emails that come in. And as they compound and compound, we ended up the whole day reacting to the emails, whereas if we just answered it within that time, we would get to the next batch in the designated time we decided to. So the 2-minute rule, anything over 2 minutes, we can acknowledge it, or we can push it somewhere else and negotiate with the other individual, or do it when we decide to. One of the other strategies you can use is to set up exit times first. So when going into something, set the exit time with the other party. For example, if an individual gets you on the phone, you can say to them, I have about 15 minutes on this, and I need to end the call at that point. That way the individual gets right to the point, and they can tell you exactly what's on their mind. So it's one of those unexpected interruptions. You can let an individual know what your limits are. In other words, think of it like a cutoff switch. I have 10 minutes to handle this with you. Is this something that you're going to need to do with me? The other thing you can do toward this is, another idea I have is if an individual is truly an invader, and let's say that you're on a high-performance day and the individual gets through to you, or you get an email, or let's say you even get one of those cell phone calls. One thing I respond with is, Stan, today I am working on 9s, 10s, and even 11s on a scale of 1 to 10. If the matter you're calling about is a 9, 10, or 11, I'd like to look at it. What are your thoughts? Most individuals would say, it's not a 9, 10, or 11. It can wait. And then I'm going to say, great, when do you want to handle it? And then we schedule it. Out of sight, out of mind. It's time activated. We're done with it. Cell phones, the ball and chain. Technology makers leading us to believe that it's going to make us more efficient. I see more people talking on their cell phones in movie theaters, with their families, at the river, at resorts, on vacations. Cell phones have become the biggest invader. In fact, I think they take more time than they actually save us. Nevertheless, we seem to be in this habit of being accessible. So what can you do to minimize distractions with your cell phone? Well, the first thing is don't give out your number. Only give out your number to a limited group of people. Your cell phone is something that should be preserved for emergencies only. In fact, you can leave a message on your cell phone outgoing message to say, please do not leave a message here. Please email me at the following. So that you encourage people not to leave messages or only give them instructions on the types of messages or the emergencies under which they should be leaving a message. Again, emergencies can be perceived or real, so we don't know. So at the end of the line, you should not be giving out your cell phone number. Do not put it on your business card. I don't agree with picking up your cell phone. It also compromises your positioning. In other words, why would an expert or somebody who's good at what they do, it's a law of supply and demand. The more you're in demand, the more you're in demand. Somebody who's constantly answering their cell phone appears to be always open. And when a salesperson or an entrepreneur appears to be always open, they don't appear to be busy and they don't appear to be the justifiable solution. So for you to be answering your cell phone really compromises you as an authority, as an expert, and it compromises your power. If you were to get George Bush on the phone tomorrow, would you think he was important? If you were to call Colin Powell tomorrow and he could take your call, would you think he's important? Probably not. So we don't often associate accessibility with the loss of authority or positioning, expertise, power, etc. This is a byproduct of what happens when we sell out and react and respond versus keep to our guns. So with your cell phone, ultimately, don't even have one. Why do you need a cell phone? The only way you need a cell phone is if you're going somewhere and you fear not being able to reach somebody, or you only give it to your family in the unlikely event something would happen. But you can get a pager. I know it sounds ancient, and you could be paged if something were to happen, and only make outgoing calls on your cell phone. Absolutely look at caller ID if people have your cell phone number, and you could do it this way. The next step is to minimize meetings. There's a great book, I forget the author, but the book is called Death by Meeting. Meetings, 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 and more meetings. And the whole week, the whole day just seems to be a bunch of meetings that you don't need to be in. Meetings can get very out of hand. So something happens, we need another meeting. Something happens, we need another meeting. Ask yourself if you really need to be in that meeting. And ask yourself if a meeting is really necessary. Could the information get to others via a different form? Could there be a conference call? Could there be an email, a submittal? Could there be a workup, a technology, something that would eliminate a meeting? As far as meetings go, here are my suggestions on meetings. Every day you should have a 5-minute meeting with everybody to huddle up. Ritz-Carlton does it in every hotel every day with 81 employees, from the top to the bottom, from senior management down to the cooks in the kitchen and then the room cleaners. You can do daily meetings for 5 minutes, and in those meetings you talk about wins and accomplishments for 1 or 2 minutes, anything they need to know as far as the day goes, pertinent information about things that are happening, current events, and then any bottlenecks. And most of those bottlenecks will be parking lotted to weekly meetings or monthly meetings. As far as a weekly meeting, 15 to 30 minutes. The agenda should be much of the same. You just have a longer scope to handle much bigger matters. And then you have one monthly meeting, either by department or throughout the entire company, that's just geared toward development, information, and strategy. It could be you just giving information, running the numbers, but there also needs to be some development. And then every 90 days is more really geared toward goal setting and development, obstacle removal, strategy, etc. It's for people to think together. So like I said, if you're having a meeting based on reactions to issues, this should help you proactively deal with that and to minimize meetings. Meetings will also help your teams think more autonomously. So really think to yourself, do I really need to be in this? Do we really need to be in this meeting? Could we solve this another way? The next step is to every day organize your day around the 6 most important actions that you want to accomplish. Now, in order to do this, in order to organize your 6, we've got to think of a couple of sources of information. The first one is projects and tasks that have come up and shown up in our face that we didn't necessarily plan. I mean, there are things that we just have to get done inevitably. So by having a sense of what those are, by having those listed somewhere or an objective capturing device like a calendar or Outlook, that will enable you to look at them objectively. Now, in setting up the environment, I suggest that you have that around you. So set up the environment so that you really don't think much. You have grease boards around you that collect all of those ideas, long range and short range. You should be keeping a weekly project list to get out of your head, and projects are outcomes that require steps to achieve. Time management fails completely. There is no such thing as time management, and I've talked about this in many other audios and programs. The reason is we can't manage time, period. We can manage a couple of things. We can manage energy. We can manage our levels of regeneration, rejuvenation, our levels of fun, our levels of spirit. We can manage our levels of focus within that. We can get restful sleep with the time we have and be ready for the next moment. We can prepare for something and execute better. We can take time off and vacate, and we can enjoy, we can daydream and live in our imagination. What we can do is we can have more energy with the time that we have. But time management doesn't work. The other form that works is called action management. And part of the reason that we get stuck or overwhelmed with an environment that's hazardous is because we don't manage actions. We don't decide on next steps. If you're going to organize your 6, you have to, on a preliminary basis, define what your demands are. What are all of your responsibilities? So something I do with the entrepreneurs is make a list of all the roles that you have. Your role as a husband, your role as a leader, your role as a manager, your role as a coach, your role as a soccer mom, your roles everywhere you are, and attached to those roles, almost in orbit around it, like the radiation of a sunbeam. These are tasks and projects. This will help you see what your current responsibilities are. Some of those are essential, some of them are not. So as you go through these, you're thinking about whether you're going to do them, you're going to dump them or delete them, because the act of actually doing it is of a greater consequence than removing it. So you actually remove it, or you could delegate it. You could do it. You could delay it. These are the 4 Ds. You can dump it. You could do it. You could delegate it. Or you could delay it. Any of those 4. We often lose sight of those different zip codes in how we can process information that we're responsible for processing. When I say information, I mean the responsibilities that are demanded of us in the roles that we're in. In sisterhood to that, or parallel to that, hanging out in the same room, is what our imagination's conjured up. So our imagination has conjured up goals, ideals, vision, places we want to go, and in order to get there, it requires action. And in order for it to require successful action, it requires successful steps. So some of these steps coexist with the stuff we've got to get done. So look at it this way. It's like 50,000 feet has to hang out in the same room with ground zero. What we do today, right now, in the present, has to coexist with what we're doing for the future. And it's this sort of past, present, future relationship that's just so critical. And that incessant freneticness, that treadmill of getting caught up in past and present, is what potentially steals the requirements of our future outcomes. So why do I say this? Because if you don't have a sense of the tasks and steps that lead you to your outcomes, if you don't know what has to happen now to get what you want to have happen then, and if you don't know what needs to be done so that you can eliminate the noise, those two things need to coexist, and that's where the Daily 6 fuses. On a daily basis, we ask ourselves, what are the 6 most important activities, the 6 most important actions that I need to get done? And I'm using my notion of the future. I'm using my notion of the past and the present, of what needs to be eliminated, what needs to be done, and what needs to happen in order for me to move ahead toward what I want. So I have many sources of responsibility unto my future and unto my current situation. Now, in order to minimize interference, in order to minimize complexity, we're saying 6. What are the 6 most important items I can accomplish, the 6 most important actions? Make a list of the 6 most important items for that day. And then assign the amount of time to each. So you're going to assign the time. You're going to allocate how much time you expect. Now, you're going to use some comparative thinking here, because you're going to use some of your experience and imagination, observations, to assign the amount of time. I'm telling you, it may be broken. You may not know how much time it takes because you haven't had experience doing things that you haven't done before. That's okay. It's a learning process. You're going to compare it to the reality when you do them. And that way, next time, you'll have a better sense of what to expect. So be willing to go into this with a broken idea. You don't know what to expect, but you're willing to assign yourself the time to organize your thoughts and your actions. Now sum it up. So take all those actions that are assigned the time and then sum it up into a total amount of time. Now, here's the key. Identify what you're most reluctant to do. What do you have the biggest resistance to do? Itemize that first. Brian Tracy has an expression, eat the frog. He says how we deal with procrastination is we eat the frog first because everything else is coasting the way down from there. It doesn't require a lot more effort. The things that require us effort that we can't delegate, we can't delay, we must do, are the things that often are a function of our goals. They're necessary items. So, for example, if I don't like to walk, I absolutely hate it, but it's a necessary action that's going to support me getting thin, I'm going to walk first in the day. It's going to be the very first thing I'm going to do. And if I know that my eating habits are in direct proportion to my ability to lose weight, I'm going to eat some foods probably first in the day, like fruit or proteins that I need to eat that are very healthy, a low-fat diet, so that I do those things first, and then I've got the enthusiasm over the effort for the rest of the day.